I'm 98 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm going to tell you the truth about what I lived through. Not the sanitized version, not the polite version that makes white people comfortable. The real truth. The truth I've been too ashamed to speak out loud for nearly 8 decades. And I need to tell you why I stayed silent for so long, because that shame, that silence, it's been killing me slowly my entire life. You might think a man who lived through what I lived through would want to tell his story, would want the world to know. But shame doesn't work that way. When you experience the kind of dehumanization I experienced, when you survive the kind of violence I survived, something inside you breaks. And part of that breaking is the belief that your pain doesn't matter, that your story doesn't deserve to be told, that speaking up will only bring more pain. So I stayed quiet. I buried it deep. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I kept my head down. I survived. But surviving isn't the same as living. And now, at 98 years old, with whatever time I have left, I've realized something. My silence didn't protect me. It didn't protect my children or my grandchildren. All it did was allow the lies to continue. All it did was let people pretend that what happened to me, to us, wasn't that bad. So I'm breaking my silence, not for sympathy, not for attention, but because the truth matters, because my story matters, because every day I stay silent is another day I let them win. I was born in 1926 in Alabama. That detail matters because it tells you everything about what my life was going to be. I came into this world as a black boy in the Deep South, and from my very first breath, I was considered less than human by the people who controlled everything around me. My earliest memory is of fear. I must have been 4 or 5 years old. My mother gripping my hand so tight it hurt, pulling me across the street because a group of white men were walking toward us on the sidewalk. I didn't understand why we had to move. I didn't understand the terror in her eyes. But I learned. God, I learned fast. By the time I was 7, I knew the rules. Don't look white people in the eye. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't walk on the same side of the street. Don't exist in a way that makes them uncomfortable. Don't be too smart. Don't be too proud. Don't be too anything. Just survive. Just make it through another day without getting hurt. I want to tell you about something that happened when I was 9 years old. Something I've never told anyone. Not my wife before she died, not my children, not my pastor, no one. I've carried this for 89 years, and the weight of it has been crushing. I was walking home from school. It was a hot afternoon, and I was thirsty, desperately thirsty. I passed by a store, and I could see through the window that they had cold drinks. I had 3 pennies in my pocket that my grandmother had given me, so I went inside. The moment I walked through that door, I knew I'd made a mistake. The white man behind the counter looked at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. But I was 9 years old, and I was thirsty, and I had 3 pennies. So I asked, very politely, if I could please buy a soda. He stared at me for what felt like forever. Then he smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach hurt. He told me to wait right there. Then he went to the back of the store. He came back with 2 other white men. They surrounded me, and they started asking me questions. Where did I get the money? Did I steal it? Did I think I was good enough to drink from the same bottles as white folks? Was I stupid? Was I trying to cause trouble? I was 9 years old. I was shaking so hard I thought I might fall down. I tried to explain that my grandmother gave me the pennies, that I just wanted to drink, that I was sorry. But every word I said made them angrier. One of them grabbed me by my shirt and lifted me off the ground. He told me that if I ever came back to that store, if I ever thought I could walk through that door like I was equal to them, they would teach me a lesson I'd never forget. Then he threw me out onto the sidewalk. Hard. I hit the ground and felt my knee split open, blood everywhere. But I didn't cry. I had already learned that crying made it worse, so I got up and I walked home, and when my mother asked what happened to my knee, I lied. I told her I fell, and I never told her the truth. That's what shame does to you. It makes you protect the people who hurt you. It makes you lie to the people who love you. It makes you believe that somehow what happened was your fault. I carried that story inside me like a stone. And it wasn't the only story. There were dozens, hundreds, a lifetime of moments where I was reminded that I was less than human, where I was humiliated, threatened, violated, where my dignity was stripped away piece by piece until I didn't think I had any left. When I was 14, I watched my uncle get beaten in the street by police officers for talking back. He didn't do anything wrong. He just asked why they were searching his car. They beat him until he couldn't stand, until his face was unrecognizable. And when it was over, when they finally drove away, we had to carry him home. We couldn't take him to the hospital because we knew they'd finish what they started. My uncle was never the same after that. Something broke inside him. He stopped talking much. He stopped looking people in the eye. He just existed, like a ghost. He died when I was 17. Heart attack, they said. But I know better. They killed him that day in the street. It just took 3 years for his body to figure out what his spirit already knew. I learned from watching him. I learned that fighting back, speaking up, standing tall, all of that just got you hurt. So I made myself small. I made myself quiet. I made myself invisible. And I told myself that was wisdom. That was survival. That was the smart choice. I got married when I was 22. My wife was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Strong and proud and brave. Too brave sometimes. She wanted to fight. She wanted to speak up. She wanted our children to grow up in a world where they didn't have to be afraid all the time. But I was terrified. I had seen what happened to people who fought back. I had seen what happened to people who didn't stay in their place, so I told her to be quiet. I told her to keep her head down. I told her that we had to protect our family, and the only way to do that was to survive. She listened to me, and I watched the fire in her eyes slowly die out over the years. I watched her become smaller, quieter, just like me. And the guilt of that, the knowledge that I took her courage and turned it into fear, that's something I'll carry to my grave. We had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and I taught them the same lessons I learned. Don't stand out. Don't fight back. Don't make waves. Just survive. I thought I was protecting them. I thought I was teaching them how to make it in a world that hated them. But what I was really doing was teaching them to hate themselves, to believe that their silence was necessary, to believe that their pain didn't matter, to believe that survival was the best they could hope for. My oldest son, he had dreams, wanted to be a lawyer, smart as a whip, that boy. Could argue any point, make any case, but I discouraged him. Told him to find something safer, something that wouldn't put a target on his back. So he became a janitor, a good job, steady work, safe. But I watched the light go out of his eyes just like it went out of his mother's. I worked for 47 years at the same factory, did the same job day after day, never complained, never asked for a raise, never spoke up when I saw other people, white people, get promoted over me even though I'd been there longer, worked harder, knew more. I just kept my head down and did my job. Other black men at that factory, they tried to organize, tried to demand fair treatment. I didn't join them. I was too afraid. And when some of them got fired, when some of them got hurt, I told myself I made the right choice. I told myself that survival was enough. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Because every day I stayed silent, every day I accepted less than I deserved, every day I taught my children to do the same, I was dying inside. I was killing the part of me that knew I deserved better, that knew we all deserved better. I retired at 68. My wife died 2 years later. Cancer. But I think she died of something else too. Died of swallowing her voice for so many years, died of making herself small, died of living in fear. After she was gone, I was alone with my silence, alone with all these stories I'd never told, all this pain I'd never shared. And I thought about telling my children, thought about finally being honest about what I'd lived through, what I'd seen, what I'd felt. But I couldn't. The shame was too deep. I had spent 70 years teaching them to be silent. How could I suddenly tell them that silence was killing us? How could I admit that everything I taught them was wrong? So I stayed quiet, even as I watched my grandchildren grow up, even as I watched them face their own versions of racism. Different, maybe, but still there, still hurting them, still making them question their worth.